I just got off the phone with a contractor who's going to be a new client of ours, and they're going to be buying to start 10 leads a week, and each lead is $90, so it's about $3,600 a month initially off of this one client. And I actually wanted to make this video because I was talking to one of my hometown buddies, and he was just having trouble wrapping his head around, like, how is this real? How is it possible that you can get 3 clients and make more than like 95% of Americans? And my guess is you probably have a somewhat similar mindset of like, how on earth is that possible? Like, that's so much money compared to what I'm used to. So I just want to kind of give you the unfiltered truth behind what it's like actually building your first AI growth agency, where you're licensing and selling AI sales teams and sometimes marketing to these local businesses. And I want to talk about what it actually takes, what actually works, and why I think this might be one of the best opportunities for beginners to break into the sort of online business space. So if you're wondering, like, is this something I can actually do? Is this a good business model to start? Hopefully this video will answer that for you. So the first thing I really like about this model and why I think it's such a good opportunity is we're not selling something to consumers who are very picky about their investments. We're also not selling things to massive businesses. We're kind of working in this golden middle ground. For example, the guy I just got off with, he's run a roofing company for 12 years. They've been making good money. It's consistent. Their problem is he's not an AI expert and he's not a marketing expert. And so he doesn't know exactly what he needs to be able to kind of give his business a competitive edge in the branding and positioning and social media kind of game. He was also spending around $48,000 a year on advertising, and he was getting like roughly a break even. And they weren't really even accurately tracking anything. So they weren't positive what the attribution for what deals were from ads and what deals were just like referrals. And so just like the majority of my clients, when I went and I explained to him how our AI sales teams work and how they kind of work in tandem with our ads, he was like, is that even real? Like, does that sort of thing even exist? And that's where it kind of clicked for me roughly around like 6 months ago. AI is not now like new. It's been around for over 2 years at this point. Every business owner has heard of AI. They're just tired of getting pitched by a bunch of people who have no clue what they're doing and that have low quality products that they're offering. People are just trying to plug in AI for the sake of using AI as opposed to having an actual tangible benefit for the business. And so that's where we can come in, right? It's valuable for them to have someone who understands the system, understands how to implement it, and kind of start to finish can plug and play something that uses AI, which is cool, it's shiny, it's fancy, right? But the main point of it is we're following core principles, marketing, and then a sales team converting those into leads. Because they may not understand AI or advertising very well, but what they do understand is getting qualified appointments and being able to convert those into more deals. And so that's the gap. That's the opportunity. And I actually think now is the perfect time. So my projection is in 3 to 5 years, a lot of this stuff is going to be a lot harder to break into. But right now we're in this golden period where people are open to adopting AI, but it hasn't been majorly oversaturated by, dozens and dozens and dozens of companies pitching the same exact thing. In fact, AI sales teams, I rarely see anybody who's ever heard of it or been able to use it anywhere close to the level our system does it, at least. And so at its core, these clients don't care if something's new, they just care if it's something that actually works and will make them more money. And so if you are sitting and kind of thinking, I want to start a business, I just don't know when, I highly, highly recommend you start to take those first steps now. Because as time goes on, it's only going to get harder to break into this game and it's only going to get more competitive. And this whole AI model kind of ties into my second point, which is when you start your first business, you want to make sure you pick a model that's effective. And by the way, I don't mean this in the, you got to get the perfect model, otherwise you're going to fail, right? Most of the time it comes down to the person using the model. But you want to pick a model that's actually going to give you skills that's not easily replaceable. One of the best things about starting your business is people with normal jobs are reliant on their boss to keep them employed. Guess what happens if the boss says, hey, we don't need you anymore? They're out of a job and they have to go find another one and start from ground zero all over again. So my big thing is I want a business model that, one, is not going to be easily replaced, right? Where my experience and I'm the asset, I'm building an actual skill that's transferable. But two, something that I would be able to apply to any industry. And if something, God forbid, did happen, I would be able to effectively restart very quickly. And that's why things like TikTok Shop, drop shipping, trading, all of those sort of business models, they can work. But for some reason that business model gets nerfed, those people's skills are not very transferable into another industry. Whereas if you've learned how to close business owners and do business to business sales, you've learned how to build out AI agents, you've learned marketing and advertising, you've learned branding, that can be applied into literally any other industry you go into. And on top of that, you're selling something that businesses need right now. Every business wants to make more money. Whether they're struggling, they need more money to survive, or whether they're doing well, they want more money to grow. And 9 times out of 10, they don't have a consistent system to be able to get them qualified appointments because it's competitive. And so when we plug in something like this that works extremely well right now, that most of their competition isn't using, they'll pay a premium for that. And so we're able to charge a premium price, anywhere between $2,000 to upwards of sometimes $10,000 a month, depending on how big the client is. But most importantly, we're not competing with an enormous amount of people providing this. It's a relatively new model. Not a lot of people know about it or are offering it in this way, at least, and they don't have access to the tech to make it work well. So we're able to charge a high ticket price with people that need it when we have low competition, and we're building actual skills. I think it's probably starting to piece together why doing something like this, a service-based model, is so effective. Now, the next question I get asked very often by people is, well, how do I actually start learning how to do this? And the first one people think of is, can I learn from YouTube? The best analogy I can give for this is it's like learning how to do your own taxes or learning how to fix your own car or learning how to build your own house from YouTube. The main issue that I see people run into is there's a lot of competing information. And I'm sure that there are a lot of other ways to run this model that I run that I'm not doing right now. But the problem is if you get one piece from one person, one from another, and you try and put those together, you put together a mediocre at best business model that you sort of piecemealed together, that you don't actually, each part isn't built to work with other parts within it. And all that time you're running like this expensive software stack. And so it starts to add up in cost, especially if you don't get like that first client right off the rip. Now you can do that absolutely if that's the way you want to go. For me personally, I realized I don't need to figure out everything from scratch on my own. I just want to find someone who's already doing it, clone their system top to bottom. I would recommend is instead of taking all that time to do that, find someone who already is running that model and clone their system to a T. This doesn't necessarily mean me. This could be anybody who's running a business model that you really like. But instead of trying to piece a bunch of things together from what people put online, find someone who's doing something that's working, copy it to a T, follow their systems, their process, and just compress that 12 months of figuring things out into 1 to 2 months of actually just doing revenue generating activities. I promise you your business will be a lot farther because of it. Because a lot of people just factor in like the initial cost of joining a program or learning a new skill, but they don't actually factor in how much money is lost from opportunity cost, right? If you can start making $10,000 a month within 2 months, I'm not saying that necessarily will happen, but it's very possible. That more than makes up for, let's say you invest $10,000 into a program, right? You've made up for that within 2 months. And now the other 10 months of that year, you're just profiting. But that kind of brings me to my third point, which is how difficult is it to actually start a model like this? Because I don't want to sit here and act like this is some push button, overnight success type of business model. The hardest part actually is just getting your first client, because what's going to happen is you're going to hop on with them. You're not going to know a lot of the things you're talking about. And odds are that first person you speak to will not end up purchasing from you. So if you start something like this, I just want your expectation to be like, initially, it's going to be a decent amount of work, talking to businesses, finding people who are curious, getting on calls, demonstrating the system. But the main goal of that first month is just to get your first client in. And I want you to think about that as sort of paying your dues, right? You're accelerating what should take 6 to 12 months into 1 month of just getting smacked in the face, getting told no. I'm not saying it's easy, but it compresses the time a lot. And so after that first month, you're able to get your first client. And from there, things start to pick up a little bit more. A lot of people say, well, David, what if I don't know how to sell very well? You probably won't in the beginning. But the good thing is we want to just focus on one thing, and that's our product here. And by getting that first client in, you're going to start to get a testimonial. You're going to get social proof. You're going to learn their industry better. And when you get on the next demo call to show people how your system works and how the software works and how you can plug it in for them, you're going to have a lot more context on using it for their industry as a result of that. And even beyond that, a really beautiful thing about this system is you're able to get people on board and sold for $0 down, because you make money when you make them money. So it is a lot easier of a pitch to convert people on instead of saying, hey, pay me $5,000 up front. So as long as you're willing to get smacked in the face a little bit, you're going to be able to succeed with this and get your first few clients and actually start making money. Now, another thing that gets brought up a lot is, well, what if I don't have time to be able to invest in that first, month of doing this? And my thing is, first off, you don't need to do full time, right? You don't need to quit your job and give up everything else to go all in on this. Like, obviously, it's good to give it time and attention. The other thing I would say, though, is that there's never going to be a perfect time. You're always going to be busy. What ends up happening is you make time for your priorities. And so what you really need to figure out is, right now, running this agency and making money with this, is that a priority to you? And I can't make that decision for you. For some people, it's not, and that's totally okay, right? But if this is something that you're serious about and you want to make money, 9 out of 10 times when people say I want to, but now's not the right time, they never end up doing it. And one of the things that my mentor told me early on is more dreams are killed by not starting than by failing. And so actually think about, like, in your future, how would you feel if you never started the business? If you'd feel okay, then that's fine. You don't have to do it. But if you're like, I would deeply regret that, right? I really want to make this thing work. Then the best thing you can do to actually make sure you don't feel that in the future is take action now. It doesn't have to be perfect action. Doesn't mean you have to necessarily pull the trigger on a program or a course or whatever, but at least start doing something to generate revenue with the business. Not just form an LLC, not just watch YouTube videos. Actually start reaching out to your first couple of companies. Start to put together the back-end systems to fulfill, because that's going to be what gets you closer to that goal. Now, I know this is kind of an off-the-cuff video. I just wrote down a couple bullet points and was like, just want to rant about this, but hopefully you got a little bit more clarity on what it takes in the beginning to actually start that first business and get something going. If you've watched this far, you're probably in one of two camps. You're probably thinking either this sounds incredible, I really want to do this, but I have no clue where to start. Or you're thinking this sounds awesome, I think I'm going to go figure it out on my own. And both are valid, but I do want to share a perspective that may help you get a little clarity on what the right direction for you is. Most people, when they try and figure out something like this on their own, they spend 12 to 18 months working through everything. And most of them quit before they ever sign their first client. And it's not because they're not smart, but it's because it costs money to run a business. And so money that would otherwise be going into shortcutting it is just going into like the base expenses to keep the business up and running, especially if you're doing it over a 12-month period. On top of that, it's just tough to stick with something if you have no progress, no traction, you just keep pouring time into it. But I know people who just copy and paste my system that will get their first few clients within the first 30 days. And that's not necessarily like a guarantee, but it is possible. And so if you are looking to shortcut the process and you just want to kind of cut to the chase and make something happen, I highly recommend you watch this video here. I go more in depth and actually showing you the back-end systems. This was just sort of like a high level off the top of my head conversation. Watch this video here, kind of dive into how the system looks. I'll show you the software on the back end, how I get my first couple clients, all of that cool stuff. And then you can figure out more if this is something you want to do. And if you do, at the end of that video, I kind of talk about how you can potentially work with me and take my systems, take everything I use, and just plug and play it for yourself. But I hope you got some value. I hope you got some clarity, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.